Episode 200 of the Edible Valley podcast.
This week, we're celebrating the Edible Valley. Do you ever wonder where your food comes from? That's what got us started on this adventure.
In each episode, we ask experts to weigh in on the food topics that matter to you, from growers to producers to chefs.
And I challenge John, Darren, and you to learn more about your food and the stories behind it. From our hub on Vancouver Island in the beautiful Comox Valley, join us as we explore our Edible Valley. And a very good day to you. I can't believe we're finally saying this. Episode... Come on, guys. 200! Wow.
Darren's full of the energy right now. I can see it right there. He's like...
I'm not... Yeah, let's just full disclosure. Darren, what's going on? Come on, let's interrupt this. Talk to me. What's going on, Darren?
No, nothing. I just haven't had a lot of sleep. I guess I was doing some pre-partying for Edible Valley's 200th episode.
Yeah, this is, this in this glitzy showbiz life that takes up a lot of our time. But no, we are ready to go.
Let's open the bottle of champagne.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pop.
Yeah. So with this in mind, we've got a great episode today. We're going to be talking about ourselves, though. We're going to be talking about Edible Valley. We've got a huge list of every single episode we've ever done. And look, we're not going to talk about every single one, but we want to run you through the highlights, the things we learned, the things we enjoyed. And we want to thank you so much for being part of that journey. I've been privileged enough to be part of it for a really small amount of time. But in that time, I've learned so much from our listeners and from you gentlemen as well. I want to give a special mention to Blaine. We've got a chair here for you, mate. You're not here right now, but you are in our hearts, and there's a chair for you at the table because you are a critical building block of Edible Valley. It would not be where it is without you. So you are appreciated and loved, and we miss you. So without further ado, let's start talking about Edible Valley.
Well, let's introduce ourselves. Of course, I'm Chef Jonathan Fraser.
Yeah, I'm Darren Howlett, co-host.
Oh, you just co-host today.
Just co-host today.
I'm William. I am the producer.
And this is the Edible Valley podcast.
Let's do this
Episode 200.
Yeah.
Wow. Who knew that when Blaine came to me, he's like, do you know what a podcast is? And I looked at him completely blank face and said, no.
When was this? Like 10 years ago?
This was 2000. And what do we look at? 2012?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
So we're talking London Olympics. Queen's Silver Jubilee.
God, I forgot there was London Olympics. That's
They left a good impression.
That was a really good impression on me, I guess. I was too busy doing the Edible Valley podcast, right? It's amazing how how things have changed and how this podcast has evolved over the years, and how I have this awesome team working with me.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, lots have changed, but you look at those first few episodes, or rather listen to those first few episodes, and they're so different than what we do now. I mean, back then they were 2 hours long, dipping deep into one specific aspect, and now I feel like we've got these very sort of concise, focused, prepared episodes, more than sort of the rambling and meandering around from before.
So we're talking 2012. We're talking you, John, and Blaine. Darren, when did you come into it? What year are we thinking?
It was in 2012. It was the end of 2012. I came in on as a guest in that first year. And then 3 episodes later, I started subbing in for Blaine.
Right.
And within a few episodes, I was just permanently replaced him.
It's funny how small this world is because Darren
came
in as a fill-in because my boss and chef, all St. Pierre.
Our current boss at that time was supposed to be a guest.
And he had to cancel. It was the last minute, and I was literally at work. He sent me a text, or no, he didn't. He never sent. It was an email.
Yeah.
And then said, "I can't make it tonight. I'm really sorry." And I was like, "Oh, who can I do?" And then I looked at Darren, and I'm like, hey, Darren, you've got a sushi company going right now. And he's like, yeah, I'm just building this kamabento.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah,
what you doing tonight?
And that's it.
Yeah, and John and I, even more so, I think it was proximity that kept me back in that brought me back in as a guest host, in that I only lived a block away from John. So when all of a sudden, same thing, after that episode had gone well, I'd said to him, hey, this was a lot of fun. If I can ever be of help again, let me know. Yeah, and then after, I guess Blaine wasn't available, and he was like, hey, Darren's right around the corner. Let's see if he can sub in for Blaine tonight. And then from there it was, I've been on ever since.
And it's funny how it all started out, because I guess we could dive into a little bit of our recording studios over the years.
Yeah.
Because it's changed quite a bit.
So where was the first one?
So the first one which never aired was in Blaine's back room.
There's a secret first episode?
It's been
episode
long.
0?
Blaine may have a copy of this, but it was never uploaded to anything.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, it was a great one that we do? Well, we did it in his kitchen at his house, and all you could hear was of his fridge, his refrigerator, and so shut off. And we're just like, so we did this, and we felt really, it was horrible, right? Like it's the two of us nervously talking to each other, no chemistry at all. And then we listened to it, and not only like the first time listening to your own voice, which is painful to listen, even once you get into it, it was all of a sudden hearing this motor grinding in the back. So we're heartbroken. So we're like, okay, let's start over again.
So you had an idea of how you wanted it to sound.
We did. We had an idea. Right. We had a dream of like we wanted to talk to people. It was all about introducing the people that made food in our community, so that we would know who they were. So so you had that personal connection to who the chefs were, who the farmers were, who the producers were. Because Blaine was like, I don't know any of these people, and he's like, why should I shop local? Like that was our whole thing, was really to promote. Shop local. That
was the first ever motto for why should you shop local?
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, that was just it. It was like, but if you know these people,
right? Yeah. So then we moved to the back room, and that was a great episode. And then we started heading out, and we started doing it remotely. And so I can't even remember what we used for recording devices. Yeah, I think we used like an iPhone or something, or a computer with a snowball microphone.
Oh, I remember that snowball microphone.
Yeah, and then we did recordings at the Halstead farm.
Right.
What was that other one? There was I should have it right in front of me. Oh, Brian McCormick, we had come in, who was my neighbor at the time before he'd started Clever Crow, the salt and the farm and all that. And then we had the Nook family, which they were talking about commercial fishing and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
and we did that at their house. So that was kind of fun. But we realized like the quality was horrible.
Yeah, you couldn't control it at all.
We couldn't control it, and like people were fading in and out. And so then Blaine put a message out saying, "Can someone help us with our podcast?" And that's where Drex contacted us, who was. God, I don't even remember what his position was, but he was working for Jet FM, and he was doing the shows. And so he brought us in for a meeting. And so we're kind of like, we're laughing a little bit because this is a meeting to talk about doing a podcast at a radio station. Right. None of us have experience doing this. Like, we're like, I'm just a cook in a restaurant. I guess I was a chef then, but I was just stepping into my own, and I was like kind of nervous about this. Anyways, he's like, he bought on. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to produce these shows for you. And so you'll come in, we'll use my equipment, we'll record, and it'll be great. And that's when Darren stepped in, and we started doing a whole bunch of shows. And it just became just part of the thing. Yeah. And part of the deal, too, was for me at that time is I was cooking meals. So I'd cook dinner for me and Blaine.
I forgot about that.
We would meet up at my house, have dinner, and I would cook something, and then we'd take a plate to Drex at the radio station.
That was part of the payoff. He was getting chef prepared meals in exchange for booth.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun because then we had some food, some recipes, and stuff like that. But that was kind of all consuming.
Yeah,
I imagine. Wow.
And then after that, what happened? Oh, then Drex left and went to Vancouver. And his career shot off, and he's doing great over there right now.
Right.
So. And that left us with, and that's when I said, well, maybe I'll just rent some equipment, and set up in the basement. And so, we were off for a few months, And then me and Blaine started going, and then Blaine started getting into the paleo thing.
Right.
And so he really wanted to become a paleo, do paleo farms and...
Yeah, he was looking into permaculture.
Permaculture, that was the other...
Yeah, and a paleo diet and permaculture. And, power to him. He got inspired by some of the people that he was interviewing and decided to make some really significant life changes, which I think is... I think that right there is exactly why we do the podcast. Shine some light on other ways of,
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant, but it left you without a co-host.
Yeah, and then so Darren's like, my turn.
Great.
So yeah, that's where we set off, and we did a couple episodes, and then Darren was like, "Oh, when I owned the bar."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're not allowed to do that anymore.
Sorry, I had to bring that into this episode. He's like,
that.
I had a sound guy.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's where that came from. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, and I said, let me, I had a couple of different sound guys, and I said, I have this one sound guy that is currently got a space where we can do sound. I forgot all about that. So we contacted James and went out to Studio Live. And I mean, we ended up doing almost 100, I think literally just shy of 100 episodes at Studio Live for a couple of years.
And they were fun. And it was nice because we just had to show up there and talk. And then James took care of all the recording and organized all that. And
it's kind of shout out to James too. And we haven't really given him the props. He was, he was paid to be there, but he also helped us along quite a ways.
Yeah, we started working on. We've got a couple of videos that we did with him that were fun. Nothing that we ever published because they were like test bed. We tried out to do. I mean, let's just get into it. If we're getting into Edible Valley, we tried doing a couple test shows to see if we could make video content, cooking show for Edible Valley cooking show, and I don't know what we were going to do with it, YouTube or something maybe. Yeah,
but
I think that was our plan.
It just wasn't working there. Like it wasn't the right space for it.
Yeah, it was a music studio stage.
Yeah,
which was a lot of fun, and it had all the cool cameras and set up there, but there was no equipment, and so it was a little like we'd have to run downstairs to get water from the only sink in there.
So we just realized it wasn't the right space for it.
Yeah, and I think we did a video. We were there. We recorded 3 hours of footage.
Oh yeah.
And then I went back and looked at it, and I was like, I don't even know how to edit this to make it sound good or make it look good. Like it was just. I
do remember though that we had all of our kids they were our studio audience for that day.
Yeah,
and they ate like kings. That's what I remember. Is you just kept making food, and the kids are just eating and eating. But so that was sort of what came out of that. But it was fun. It was fun little. Side track, a little experiment in something else that who knows we may end up revisiting someday.
You know the other fun thing that
What's up?
You've probably forgotten about, and I just forgot about until we're just talking. We started doing live shows.
What?
We did. Remember we had BC Meets, Jillian.
Oh yeah.
I'm flipping through episodes really quick here trying to find it. Anyways, but we sat down and we talked about, I'm going to find it here in a second. But we brought in the Chefs Association. We asked them to come in as a live studio audience. So
That's
we had
right.
25 people. And so we had a great conversation with her. And then we had, what was it? Yeah, we had a great conversation. Then we had the guests from the studio ask questions to her about BC Meats.
Whereas, I think as a listener, you probably don't know the difference between something that us sitting around a table and talking and having a live studio audience. The big difference is we can edit out anything that we want to right now. But with a live studio audience, it's a performance. You're putting on you need to engage those people in that moment. And it was a little more difficult, and you didn't really have room for errors. So yeah, I forgot about that. That was great. That was great.
And I feel like we did a couple of those where we actually invited a couple people in there. Yeah. And it was kind of fun, right? Like it was nice to have people there. And then we had other dreams of doing a cooking show and having people there and selling tickets.
I think the underlying theme is that we really enjoy Edible Valley, and we're always looking for which ways we're going to expand it. But I think that we can come back to that later on in this episode, because I think that there's some of that churning in the background right now. But let's jump to when Will came in. I mean, we've left Will out of the conversation here.
We'll throw Will because Will.
Well, I'm relatively late to the party.
Well, this is timeline-wise. I think that brings us up to right around when you came in.
Yeah, but so I was 2013. I moved to Canada on a working holiday visa, and I got told ages before I even moved here, go to the Atlas Cafe because they are amazing, great family, massive staff retention. They got servers there. They've been there 20 years. Go to the Atlas Cafe, which I did. And that is where I met both of you, actually. Yeah. So Darren, you were one of the servers there at the time, and John, you were head chef there at the time before you went off to locals. And so I was aware and I was interested in media and broadcasting. So I was always kind of meaning to say, hey, can I be a part of this? And I remember when I returned as a student 4.5 years later.
Because you were only here for a year.
Well, I wanted to come back as a landed immigrant. Yeah. And I had some things I wanted to learn. I wanted to go further into the kind of the hospitality industry. Yeah. So I put those two together, and I did those things, which is where I am now. And I said to John straight away, I was like, can I join your podcast? And also, can I have a room in your house?
That was funny, because that was the day I was like, so I need to find a job and I need to find a roommate. And so I typed it in there and it was like, Will's like, I'm your roommate.
Yeah, I remember. I was in the Atlas when I answered it. JP, also, who was the gentleman who came in and did the drinks, the cocktails, and he's a legend of that. And I remember he said, I'm going to do his accent. Yo, Will, John, you remember John? He's looking for a roommate. And I literally dropped everything and ran over to the back, wrote to John, and this was just as the virus was hitting.
Oh, wow.
And so I wrote to you, and you tried to palm me off. You were like, "Oh, let's wait until all this virus stuff has passed." Well, I'd still be waiting.
Yeah.
How's that room going, John?
Yeah.
And I basically just said, "John, I'm moving in." I think it's to that extent. I was like, "This is going to be here for a while." Intuition, #intuition.
Yeah.
And we moved in, and I think the first week I was living with you, we went to Costco, bought one of those giant 10-kilo Cheetos bags, and we were like, well, this is our life now. Yeah. And can I say this? No, I'm not going to say it, but when certain parts of our bodies changed because of over Cheeto consumption.
Sure.
We decided that we were going to stay in the workplace. Yeah. And we had a great year of doing the podcast, living together, bonding. And
right.
That is when I got reacquainted with you, Darren.
Yeah.
As well. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
And the emergency kitchen. We did all of that together.
Yeah.
The emergency kitchen. You guys were both my sous chefs at the emergency kitchen for a while there.
Yeah. So the feeding people that were struggling, and it was an absolute pleasure and an honor to help with something like that.
Absolutely.
So that was my journey.
Yeah,
much shorter journey, but it means a lot to me, and it shows that one thing leads to another. And this podcast is proof that if you just have that desire to do something, and you have the confidence to walk forward, the things that you need to complete that journey, you can imagine will be brought to you. It will just happen. Yeah. It just is. If you can imagine it. Yeah. Then that's it. That's all you need, because it's going to be paved out for you. You just need to take that plunge. It's probably the closest to spirituality we've ever got.
Well, I think on that note, we should take a quick break, and then we'll come back.
Amazing. Well, it's 200 episodes. I was about to say 200 years then. 200 episodes, and we've got lots to get through. So we're going to jump straight into it. I'm going to go to you, Darren.
Yeah.
Standout episode for you.
Standout episode. Okay, well, I'm going to take that literally. And there was the first time that we did an episode where I was without John, and I was without a studio. And that was the one. James and I went to Flavor, a festival that happens locally about local food, and John was a participant. John was producing some of that food, so he couldn't be on.
Okay.
And James and I were walking around. I felt like a 1970s reporter because I had literally the strapped on big recording unit and a microphone, and I'm walking around, and we're in this the grounds where it's held is kind of posh, and I'm walking around looking like I'm literally anachronistically out of sync. I'm in the 70s walking around with this big old fat microphone, just randomly interviewing people. And nobody's really prepared for it. So I'm catching everyone off guard and getting horrible whatever.
Yeah.
So that was a standout because that was when I was like, my experience after that was, okay, well, that wasn't the way we normally do things, but also I need to step up my game and be more prepared as an interviewer for all of this rather than to just take it. So it elevated me. I became a better interviewer after that, or host. Host.
Yeah, you have to learn that, and just doing it is the way to learn that most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that was my standout for sure.
And Mr. John, what do you reckon?
Anytime I get to sit down with you two
Aww.
is my favorite episode. Sorry, yes. No,
You're so sweet.
I really enjoy. I feel like this is therapy for me in some ways, is sitting down with you guys, because I think part of it, we end up chatting for a good half an hour, 45 minutes before we even get into any of our episodes.
It's true.
And none of it is about episodes. Politics, religion, all that fun stuff we get out of our systems. And
literally every episode, just before we press record, it's like, right, guys, we really need to get on with this.
It truly is. It truly is.
We talked about actually going out for beers or something, because can we just do that?
Yeah.
We need to actually do that because we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. I know. We have to get it out before we get into the podcast, because we lose half of our momentum because we're all excited. We're like, Will's like, I'm doing this in my life, and Darren's like, oh my god, I got this happening, and I'm like, oh, I did this and this, and so it's just like unloading all of that stuff. Yeah, but maybe we should just record that and give that. No, maybe not. No. It's not the family show that we do here. No, but it's a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a lot of fun. But what's a standout episode then?
John. I have a bunch of standout episodes. Like, anytime I get to meet someone is a great episode. One that really changed me was the one we did with the food bank.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a real.
How did that one go?
That was just an eye opener for me. Just the fact that I realized chatting that I have never known what it's like to be hungry.
Yeah.
Right.
And to know that there's people out there that need a helping hand, and that it's up to all of us to feed our community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel very honored to have been able to sample everything in this town, right? I really get to experience food at its best, and there's nothing that brings people together more than food. Right. And so for me, it kind of just all built this, and I was just looking at this like, wow, how is this? The struggles this organization has gone through just to put food on people's plates,
Yeah.
And there's no judgment to who these people are or why they're there, right? Like,
no,
it's just,
absolutely,
here's food for people. So that was really opening.
Yeah.
For me. And
I really think that's a very, very good point, because a lot of people can quite legitimately get into the reasons for it and how to get them out of it permanently. And all of that. Yeah. And that is a really legitimate thing to talk about. But if you just keep it simple, that person is hungry. Feed them.
Yeah. We're a civilized society.
Yeah.
And that is somebody that, is part of our community.
Yeah.
Feed them.
Everyone deserves to have a full tummy.
Yeah.
So absolutely. That's something, John, that I really think that's a very good lesson that you've learned there.
No, that was a great lesson. And you know what? This has gone along the whole way with like all our episodes through, like I just love the connection of the community in here, and how much meeting the entrepreneurs in this town, like, and seeing the growth, like how people have evolved in their businesses in this community. So that's for me. Like, I have some great funny ones. Just like,
I got a couple too, but I want to know if you had a standout episode. Will, have you had one yet?
Oh, I really enjoyed the JP one actually.
Yeah, that was a bit of a laugh.
Yeah, that was a really, really. That was you weren't. Were you?
I
able to
missed
make
that one.
John missed it. It was the three of us.
Right, so it was our first one that
Yeah.
we just did.
Yeah.
And now, full disclosure, we're always looking at building chemistry on air. I think it makes it more interesting for you, the listener, to have people that genuinely get on well. We all genuinely like each other. But I think John is the common one between us.
Yeah, for
We've got quite different characters. But some of my best friends in the world and the people I learn most from and like the most are the people that are a bit different from me.
Yeah.
And so when we did our episode together, it was a bit like, what's chemistry going to be like here?
It's true.
And I do think afterwards we worked out we were basically just both the host and both. But really, I wanted to just leave you to be the main host and I was your backup,
right?
Because you'd had the experience and things like that. But,
right.
But so it for me, it wasn't. It was JP because it was great to have JP on, and he's got such a great voice.
He's great for a laugh too.
Yeah, he's a great laugh and a great guy. But it was a great show for so many reasons. I was around the table with friends. I was learning about cocktails. It was a really happy time in my life, which happened to be in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
And and for that reason entirely, I loved it. Good. So I'm just kind of chucking this question at you.
Sure.
You have no preparation for this whatsoever.
Yeah.
What could be the biggest lesson you've learned across this time? And it can be not one time where you learned one lesson, but overall, if you look back to the last 10 years, the last decade of this podcast, what lesson have you learned?
I will say something that I've learned, speaking to community. I would say the one thing that I've learned is the majority of people that we've talked to in our community that are producing food, making food, cooking food, they have a passion for food and community. Like, I don't know. I don't know why I thought it would be a little more, what's the word, jaded? Or I thought, some of these people are just in it for the money. Yeah. And I wasn't judging them. I'm like, whatever, everybody needs a career. Some people are just here for a paycheck and some people are... But I've found by and large, as we interview more and more and more people, how important food and the pursuit of better food and community and sharing, and I just there's a sort of an underlying trait that all these people at the top of their game have in common, and I'm surprised and not surprised at the same time. Now I'm surprised that they all share that same value, and now I just assume it in people that we interview.
Makes sense.
Because
what is that common trait if you had to define it?
I don't know. I don't know if I would sum it up as community, but I would definitely sum it up as there's just a drive there, that whole sharing food. And I think that includes us. I think I wouldn't say that we're at the top of our game. I'm not going to elevate us to that status.
Speak for yourself.
But there's a lot of people out there that are in charge of restaurants and oyster farms and agricultural farms and bottling, and they all have a trait that we share, where they really want to get out there and help the community and bring better things to the community. So, that's what I've learned.
Nice. Mr. John, what do you reckon? Just to confirm, biggest lesson learned?
Well, I would say, I don't know if it's lesson, but what I've got the most out of this is friendships.
Right.
Nice.
I realize the people that it seems like everyone we've done podcasts with, I've known before, and now I've get to know them and I've made a real good connection with them. Yeah. And I don't think there's a lot of people who want to come back. Right? Like everyone after an episode, they're like, oh, I thought that would be a lot more difficult. Yeah. If you ever want to talk to me again, I'm totally open.
I know. Isn't that the way? We get that all the time. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get somebody on the show. And then after they're like, oh, that was easy.
Yeah. They're like super nervous. And we're like, look, you can say whatever you want. We can stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then we can delete and we can re-record. Yet I don't think we really do that at all. Like very, very rarely.
I don't even remember it happening once. Yeah, I'm sure it has, but it's very rare.
More of the editing is I just whacked my head on the table because I forgot what I was going to say.
Darren said, He's always taking those out for me.
Yeah. But and the thing is, I think we're getting better at it because, we don't say it as much, so it works out. So I think that's what I've been getting out of the Edible Valley podcast, and it gives me passion, right? Like it gets me energized to go back into the kitchen, and it makes me want to learn more about food, and it makes me want to learn more about the industry, right?
It's so easy for us to get stuck in our own little worlds. Yeah, but it really is great to go into other people's worlds, and also what we do in terms of food, look at the wider picture, because it really gives you that guidance of where you are, what you're part of. It gives you that pride. It's just good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, so do we talk about what's next?
Yeah. What comes next?
I don't know. 200 episodes.
Shut her down.
Yeah, we're done. Right.
Song.
Surprise. No.
I'm pretty excited. I got to say, I'm pretty excited about the fact that right around the corner is our legitimate 10th year anniversary. Not that there was any illegitimacy, but I've sort of offhandedly been saying, we've been around for about 10 years. And in 2 months, we'll have been around for 10 years.
I would like everyone to know that he just realized that today, too, when he wrote the episode. He's like, oh, my God, we're only 2 months away.
I did. I only found that out today. John handed me some notes. I'm like, what?
Yeah. It's another party right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about... Sorry, I'm very sorry.
Yeah. What's next?
Well, I really want to briefly talk about the numbers. So we've got 200 episodes.
Yeah.
We've got coming up on 10 years, and we've got 60,000 downloads and rising.
Yeah.
Which means a lot to us.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the majority of those 60,000 downloads came in the last few years.
Yeah.
We sort of picked up steam over the last few years.
No one was listening to John and Blaine in the kitchen.
Well, on their snowball mic as they were tapping it with the fridge in the background.
It's actually really funny because it's a bit of a roller coaster with the years, because there's been years that we've done, 20, 50 episodes, and then we've also had a year that we did 1 episode.
Right. Yeah. But that was a very big transitional year for both of us. There was a lot going on.
We were both, I was opening a restaurant.
Yeah. That's a really good segue into the future. And the one thing for me that I would like to bring to the party is absolute consistency. So I really... I imagine the listener, we do have this empty chair, and we imagine the listener being in this empty chair at the moment is Blaine. We miss you, Blaine. Yeah. But we have this empty chair. That's the chair of the listener, and we want to be offering something of value because we so appreciate you listening. Yeah. And so that's why we keep the lines of communication open through all of our social channels. But it's about keeping it consistent, so you know when you're switching it on what you're going to get. It's going to be as regular as possible for people that have. And
I got to say, we thank you too. I mean, I know this is unprompted or whatever, but we thank you too as coming on as producer, because you're part of that. That's essentially what you're doing for us, getting us on track, keeping us on the straight and narrow, not deviating too much, making sure we're putting out regular content.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be able to, without you, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Keeping us honest.
Yeah. And actually, there's so much with doing something like this, because I'd like to give that back and thank you guys, because when you're looking at building in that consistency, I look at myself as sort of the person that tries to bring or harness that banter, the lighthearted edge, but without you guys bringing the actual thing that people listen to the podcast to learn something, to have content. Without that, it wouldn't be anything. And so you have to sort of play with the boundaries a little bit and think, well, how much can we rein this in? How much kind of information do people listen to?
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And so, you guys have both worked with that, and I hope brought around a situation where the listener is learning something and is being entertained. And I really wish I knew if we'd got that, but I guess with the downloads being what they are, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I agree.
Downloads and people commenting.
Yeah.
Going on to our host site, Podbean, which is Podbean has supported us since day one.
Yeah.
they monetize and make
Right.
sure our episodes are all clear so you can download them. And yeah, signing up with them and doing a little review on us or comment, or like on Apple.
Yeah.
Going to Apple or Google or any of
Or
those.
Facebook when we post it on
Any
there.
of those
Yeah.
places, just making a little comment or giving us 5 stars. We'll take 3.5. I swear. Whatever you want to put in there for you. We love you people for listening to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that before we wrap this up, we should probably talk about, what is next.
So I'm going to put something out there right away. I would quite like to start replaying old podcasts, maybe once a month, or something like that. So there's an old school podcast going out there. I think it's really genuinely interesting. Everyone loves a trip down memory lane.
Sure.
And it would just allow us to revisit those great moments.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone loves the time before the pandemic. We can relive it.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
No, that's a great idea, because we did one episode, which me and Blaine chatted about our first episode ever, which we put up just recently. I don't think we counted it as an episode.
No, it's not in our episode count.
Yeah, but it was one of those ones where we just sat down and we chatted about what happened in that episode, and it was just wonderful. Like it was just neat to see how his life has progressed from that. He went from doing paleo, permaculture to fletching. Mm-hmm. So making arrows.
He makes arrows.
Wow. On Hideaway.
Yeah. And to moving to a whole different island, right?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how that progression went for him, and to see how our lives was like. I went from Atlas to now I'm at Local. So changed restaurants.
And there was a lot in between too.
A pasta shop and an ice cream company, and you know, like I've been busy, and you've been busy, Darren, too, as well, doing all your things. So. We're looking the future. I think is going to be good, because I'm looking forward to actually maybe putting on a mask and getting out and going and visiting some people.
Oh yeah, like who?
Well, I want to talk to I want to get these lists going back to the people that we used to talk to, and some new faces and some new people. Like I have a lot of people a lot of farms that I use at Local's restaurant, which is awesome for me. Like I can go in there and I keep talking about Jerry Pattison. I'm like, I want to talk. I
know he's been on our list for a while of people that we want to get on.
Every time I run into him, I end up having a 5-10 minute conversation with him about something that has nothing to do with my order with him, but just about the farm and what's happening in the world, And so those are the people I want to talk to, a lot of chefs, and I mean, every time I walk into Darren's house, I'm like, I've got this episode idea. Like today was like, I want to do the history of restaurants in the Comox Valley.
Yeah. Well, that came more out of us reminiscing. We were talking about, I have this weirdly acute memory of the way this town has been over the last 40 years and all the changes, 45 years. And 40 years, I guess. And we were just talking about all the old restaurants that used to exist. And then it was like, well, there's an episode there. Like, let's talk about the genesis of this valley and the changes that have happened over the
and what
time
made them good. Here. How our standards have changed and altered. What made them good?
How we measured them, the metrics that we measure, everything.
That's it. Let's do that. All right.
Even my progression through the restaurants I've worked in this valley. It's been really exciting for me.
Well,
And I think the other thing is we're going to, all three of us, branch out a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to try something out. I mean, I don't know what kind of legs it has. I don't know how long we'll be doing it, but we're going to try not just delivering our Edible Valley podcast, but we're also going to inject some other episodes of our own shows within to the Edible Valley banner.
Do you want to start with describing what you're going to
I have
go around the table?
I have about 3 or 4 multi-episodes that are coming up. The first of which I have successfully owned and unsuccessfully owned. I have successfully owned 3 businesses in the food industry, and I'm going to talk about those and the various challenges and how I managed to get it to happen, why I'm no longer in that, but just sort of talk about the business acumen behind food, and then I'm going to follow it up with another series, TBD. That's 3 episodes from me coming up over the next couple of months. What about you, John?
Well, I was going to go to Will first.
Sure.
Thanks, John. A lot of it is in the look we're giving each other. So for my one, I actually want to focus on a little bit on front of house. My first episode, I have a friend who I am almost... He's almost convinced to come on the show. Yeah. He's been at his location for 20 years.
Yeah.
He is one of these people. He's hilarious to work with, but with customers just so deadpan. Sort of, my voice went a bit funny. Absolutely deadpan, professional down to the core, knowledge to be no other, but unbelievably funny to work with.
Yeah.
Sassy and everything in between.
Nice.
He'll know who I'm talking about. I'm going to get him on my first episode.
All right.
And for me... Well, I picked up my old textbook from cooking school, and I started flipping through it. Mm-hmm. And then I realized I had, at least in the first chapter, 15 episodes I wanted to branch into. And I wanted to get into talking about what it's like to be a chef.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I want to break it down from the very beginning, and I've got... I don't have my list here, but I want to go through and we're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about the brigade system. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the history of restaurants, where they came from. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about food science. And we're just going to run through a quick list. And I'm hoping to bring in a bunch of my cooks.
So you're saying that you're going to go through all these episodes and impart all this knowledge on the listener, and by the end, they'll be a chef?
No.
Oh.
They're basically gonna probably be like, this is not for me. This sounds really hard.
You're too invested.
But you're gonna walk them through becoming a chef.
I'm gonna walk them through the first bit of what to think about when you're wanting to take up on this profession. The things that you don't learn. Well, the things you learn doing it for 20 some odd years, you know,
all the ancillary parts.
Yeah, and so I want to just get that, and I want to bring in some young cooks, you know, some apprentices, some.
You can break them down,
and let them learn. You know, like I was talking to one of my cooks the other day about the brigade system, and she was like, I didn't realize it was based off the military. I'm like, oh my God, have I got so much stuff to talk to you about?
Yeah. So
that's my goal over the next little bit. I'm going to sort of infuse these in over the next little bit, and
that's awesome.
Go from there.
So, to reiterate to the listener here, this isn't in lieu of the Edible Valley. This is we're going to inject these episodes in between the Edible Valley.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just skip over if you don't want them.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Our hearts
if one of us annoy the bejesus out of you, just skip our episodes.
Down.
I know. I'm like, I'm going to get the smallest listenership.
No. I will. Should we the competition?
No.
every episode could be like, so I got 300 likes. How many did you get?
Hey, this is a food podcast. I've got the least experience on food by far. Yeah. I'm maybe a few downloads.
But yeah,
and all of you if you do.
And those episodes, we're going to help each other out. We're not isolating each other. We're going to each help you get those episodes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to explain more of my episode and have you guys in for the first one, and then we'll start branching out a little bit. And so
awesome.
And so I think it's going to be another full year of exploring the Comox Valley and Vancouver Island for sure.
Our Edible Valley.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. 200 episodes. This is. I feel like we've really accomplished something here.
Yeah, well, and thank you for following us and listening to us rabble on about whatever gibberish we have to say. And we hope you've learned something, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have some episodes, or you know someone has an up-and-coming business. Mm-hmm. We've been a little failure. We failed a few times over the years we've connected with some people and then not been able to do the podcast.
Yeah.
So I think this year we're going to be able to really focus on getting those people in. And
it's true.
We got we're using our new studio, which is Darren's house, which is a great open spot and very comfortable for us. So we're looking to have some people over here and showcase everything we have.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for listening to the 200th. Oh, I'll say it again.
200th.
I now have to say it again. Episodes of the Edible Valley podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope we have you along for the next 100 episode as we make our way to 300. For now, my name is William. I am the producer.
I am Chef Jonathan Fraser.
And I am Darren Howlett. co-host
of 200 episodes.
Cheers. And that wraps up another episode of the Edible Valley podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks goes to the local businesses that help support our podcast. They make it possible for us to showcase your local food community. We'd love you to follow us on your preferred social media at Edible Valley, where you can check out our blog, find recipes and tips, behind the scenes, and of course keep a lookout for where we are going to turn up next in your Edible Valley. So what standout moment? So standout moment for you, our last standout moment for you. And I'm going to ask favourite episode. So can those be two different things?
Yeah, absolutely. Standout moment for me is definitely not one of my favorite episodes, but it's not a whatever either.
And this has been an Edible Valley production.
Yeah. Beep, 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 beep. Okay. Ready again?